for that. So I will turn it over to you two.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining our session today. Hopefully we have some fun stuff for you here. Some quick introductions for you. So I'm Nick Lindberg. I work at the Carlson School of Management here at the University of Minnesota. I'm our kind of all things Salesforce, so all the kind of the builder behind the scenes on this one. And I'll have Brian introduce himself from here. Oh, we got you in the mute.
I'm Director of Employer Relations at the Carlson School in the Business Career Center. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. Well, Brian, we'll have you start off on this slide here.
Sure. As we kind of started this process, we had been tracking data and tracking our points of contact with our company partners and organizations for years. Every interaction was documented. We had a homegrown system that a GA actually built while she was a student here that we had used for 3 or 4 years. That was just done through Google Forms and submitting a form with a specific person. That was basically what did you do, and it filtered it into spots. And at some point, we ran out of space, so it was about 2 million cells down, and then it kind of quit on us, and we needed to come up with some other options, or we had to continually makeshift this as we went. So we adopted Salesforce, which was on campus already, and a couple of the different offices has used it. So we jumped in and started using it just as our activity tracking platform, and just kind of were dumping our information in there instead of doing it kind of through a career center built platform.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think it was a good starting point for us to get Brian and his team into Salesforce. One thing I'll quick mention for those who are curious, we're using Serious Insights to log our emails and things like that. So that's an app that we're doing, and that's really helped get his team up to kind of being able to be willing to track, press that easy button to make tracking happen. And so that was kind of our starting point. And then we'll quick shimmy over to another point here, and I'll quick put a thing in the chat here because I'm sure people will be curious about how we did this. And we actually have some videos from a previous Higher Ed Dreamin for this, so we won't touch this too much. But at one point, Brian and his team had implemented Handshake. They went from grad leaders to Handshake. And from that integration, when that came up, we said, hey, let's integrate those two systems as just having another data point. So kind of when they're in Salesforce, they can have that one-stop shop. And so just want to kind of show that, hey, we have some Handshake data. That's another building block that we added into Salesforce for us from there. And then this is my favorite slide of the whole day. And so, picture that's me behind a window there, or behind the tree. And this is when Brian came aboard as a leader of the career service team, or the career center team. And so we had a great team previously, but when Brian came in, he just had some new ideas, some fresh ideas. And while we've already done a bunch of stuff, Brian's ideas really catapulted. And that, I think kind of today is kind of showing Brian's brainchild here and all the cool stuff that he has. And so let's switch over. What is that brainchild that you have there, Brian?
So a couple of things that we were looking at doing is we tracked a lot of really great data. We had a lot of good information from different data points and different platforms, but we never really figured out a secret sauce of how do we rank our companies and orgs that we work with based on the engagement of that they have here at Carlson. So a couple of things we looked at was tiering out the companies based on that engagement, and ultimately based on hiring. So how many organizations are they hiring? Are they making job and internship offers? But the one thing you always come back to is, what else are these organizations doing at the school that we might not have a sightline to, or something that isn't specifically career center focused? Maybe speakers, maybe advisory councils, maybe other touch points that they have across the school that we don't see. So trying to start coming up with criteria to build out tiering our companies in a meaningful way. So you can see that they have a relationship with us. They're offering internship opportunities and they offered opportunities for our students. We're considered a core school for them. The amount of alumni that we have at that organization, we kind of started tracking those pieces, which are a little bit outside of the realm of, did they host an info session? Did they post a role on Handshake? Did they attend a career fair? Those are really important pieces for us, but we knew there were other things that we were missing. And so this was kind of the brainchild, and Nick and I took this document and kind of was our beginning document of to get this ball rolling.
Yeah, and what I'll quick kind of as a segue to the next couple of slides, so I kind of describe like each of these bullet points are different data points in Salesforce, and that may be a field, that may be an object, that may be a collection of all that stuff rolling together, aggregating from there. And so when we were looking at each of these bullet points, we're trying to figure out, one, do we have that data in Salesforce? Does that data, if it does exist, is it in a way that we can aggregate it or make it, logically get these tiers to work, or even the other data points? So I think like tier 2 at the advisory board, things like that. What do we have at the school already that we're doing or that we can maybe lean into more? And so we really kind of looked at this as a full system data map of what are we doing, what's happening, how can we make things happen from there. So it was really powerful for that. And that's where it comes, the segue into this slide becomes really powerful, where we're really, for our Salesforce build is all roads lead to Salesforce. And there's three data sets that we really needed to look at. And so we already had the Handshake data points in there. So we knew when companies were coming on campus for events, for interviews, that was already something we had. But we had to look at some of the other things. So for instance, internships and job offers, we had to look at other tools for that. Ironically, we had those forms that existed. We were gathering the data. It just wasn't in Salesforce. So we built the pipes or the plumbing to get our Qualtrics data, which is where our internship data came in. So we connected those using the standard Qualtrics connector. And then for the post-grad survey, so the undergrads, there's a post-grad survey that the entire campus fills out. We had, I think actually at Higher Ed Dreamin a couple of years ago, that whole implementation got showcased. But the post-grad survey, we were able to take that data and feed it over to our Salesforce instance via tool Del Boomi. And then 1220 is the kind of the same idea for our graduate students. And so this tiering was our way to our catalyst to integrate 1220 into there as well. And so that we're also using Boomi to do that. Boomi is kind of our master integrator for those. And so all roads lead in Salesforce. And those are the 3 data points that we really were wanting to focus on. And when we went back to that data mapping, a lot of the stuff ended up living where we wanted to live. This is maybe a little bit into the kind of the architecture side or more of the admin side of things here, where a lot of the stuff lived on the account or the company record as they were attached as child records of those. So we had an object for events, an object for offers, an object for board members, things like that. And so we needed to create a way to aggregate that stuff. And so to do that, we used a free tool, the Declarative Lookup Rollup Summaries tool. It's a great app. It's from the App Exchange. It's also open source commons for those that maybe are familiar with Summit events, things like that. It's in that same, it's kind of a peer app to that. And so we've used that to aggregate all these rollups for us. And so each of these fields ended up on a page for us. So on the account record, we have a page right here where we can then aggregate that. And this becomes our logic from there. But Brian, I think about how you'd iterate this page a lot differently. I think about how the plumbing got to this page, but you think about this page on like what's actually the data say.
Yeah, and also helpful for those that aren't living in it. So we have other stakeholders in the career center, career coaches. We have our operations team, people like that just need to see. Hey, I just need a quick snapshot. I'm chatting with the student that's really interested in company A. I'd love to see kind of what this all looks like in one place instead of trying to dig into Handshake, dig into LinkedIn, dig into this, and all of this kind of comes together. So it's helpful for my team as well. As we prepare for meetings, we can start coming in with real data, not just saying, hey, I think that session went really well. We actually can come in with more content and more data to help drive that conversation, or see maybe if there's other opportunities outside of for recruiting through our office. Maybe a student found their way in through a side door or through a part-time opportunity or something that we didn't promote. So it's nice to be able to build more rapport and more work with that organization as we kind of see the whole picture. We're not just focused on university recruiting only. We can really see, oh, this was actually a just-in-time hire. And that really still factors in, and possibly we can make more connections. So this is really helpful for us to be able to see a full picture of that prior to meetings or when we share this information generally with coaches or with students.
Yeah, I think this is really great. A couple of tidbits here. I think I'm a big fan of showing our work, and so having these fields that aggregate this stuff is really powerful. Not just to have a page like this, but then we can do this in reports. We can pick 3 of these fields and show them on there. Future state, safe harbor statement. We could build, use a tool like Apsona or Conga to do a meal merge doc for some of these fields and make it look a little bit nicer. And so I think there's some ways of, by having that field there versus having kind of the automation live in the background, do all this calculation for us, we can show our work and make some cool stuff happen from there. Speaking of the work, if you can read this page, 10 stars, gold stars to you, but that's not the purpose of this page. I think the idea was just kind of showcase what we're doing here. But the idea behind all this stuff, going back to Brian's page on the tiering, was to use out-of-the-box functionality with Salesforce, or at least kind of simple declarative solutions for us from there. And so our tiering effectively is a formula field that just looking at all those different fields. There's other ways we could have solved this, but we wanted to keep this a simple approach. As we were doing our tiering, we were noticing that we were making changes in flight. Maybe what do we look at this year? Well, what if we look at 2 years ago? What if we look at if there's more, if we've done more than 5 on-campus interviews or things like that. So we were adjusting in flight. And so having a formula field was allowing us to be really quick and nimble to make those changes from there. All right. So now we have this data, but we can do something with it. And so I think Brian and I are both going to share some things. Brian, I'll let you tee it up or lead us off, and I'll talk a little bit more as well.
So then from, my team, we're tracking various things over the course of our relationships with those organizations. So, one is, who from my team has specific accounts. We operate in industry verticals. So how are the industry verticals mapped out compared to the tiered companies? We also can then pull back and say, from my side, I have 30 tier 1 companies, 50 tier 2, and looks to be a lot of tier 3 who have minimal engagement and a real opportunity to be able to do more with our school. So we pull this out, and it's also, again, really easy to read, really easy to go through. If our Career Center director has questions, or if the coaches want to go in and take a look, this is a public-facing side that they can see, and they can go in and pull some of that information as well. But it gives us a breakdown of Career Center tiers. It gives us a breakdown of how our breakdowns are by industry sector, and it helps us with student interest. Like, hey, I'm interested in manufacturing. What can you tell me? Actually a lot, which is pretty cool. So, and the last thing is overdue communication, but I can get to that next, Nick, if you want to chime in.
No, go for it. Yeah, I think that was actually where I was going to go. So close us out on this one.
So the last thing that was really important to me is we really lose sight of the companies that aren't engaging with us, right? We're really focused on those that are in front of us at that given time. Some companies drop off the map here or there. So what I wanted an opportunity for our team to utilize Salesforce, where Salesforce can tell us when the last time these companies and organizations were communicated with, whether it be via email, a meeting, they hosted a session, something like that. So what we devised is a tiering structure, or an overdue communication structure that said tier 1 companies need to be reached out in X amount of days, every X amount of days. Tier 2 companies, a little bit longer, delayed. Tier 3, maybe every 180 days. So we would spread that out. So my team has a report that will come out weekly that lists out overdue communication and those that are in danger of going overdue and those that are currently overdue. So while we're just working with, while we're always working with our core partners and things like that, we're not losing sight of the business development piece that we need to have as part of an employer relations team. Business development is never done, so we can always continue to do it. So this is a really good way for us to direct our business development work with companies that are already familiar with us, that have already engaged, that have done something with us but maybe are maybe primed to do more with just another email or an ask for a meeting. So it's really helpful for us to go through, oh yeah, I didn't reach out to them last week. I got to get ahead of that next week and get a hold of them. So super helpful for us as we make sure we don't lose anyone through the cracks, or they didn't hire for 1 year and they fall off our radar. We want to make sure that we maintain that relationship.
Yeah, super powerful. A lot of good stuff here. I think for sake of time, we'll quick go into kind of have a couple minutes for Q&A here. So if there's any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A section here.
There aren't any questions yet, but I do have one. So you've shared a lot and you've made a ton of progress on your efforts. Do you have kind of a phase 2 or next steps? I'm curious, what's next?
Yeah, Brian, what's on your roadmap here?
From my side, this is still fairly new as what we're doing, and no, we haven't really done something like this before. So the main thing is making sure my team understands the power of the platform, and we're finding the best ways to be able to get information in. They're all pretty busy. The data that we want to get in our platform's only as good as the data that gets put into it. So the main thing is making it as easy as possible for them to get that pertinent information in. So to Nick's point earlier, we use Cirrus as our through our email to track and to submit. Through LinkedIn, I have ways to be able to utilize it to go and log into Salesforce when we're connecting on LinkedIn, things like that too. So trying to kind of close all of those loops. So it's a streamlined process. Next steps for me then is, how do we share this data out easily? How can we build out reports that can go out to the organization that can share out, hey, here's who's done stuff this week. Here's a snapshot of what my team does, instead of going through and counting every info session and counting every job offer and having it all in one spot. That's like harnessing that power moving forward to tell our story and to share the message of the office is my next steps.
Thank you. There is a Q&A in here, so I'll go ahead and kind of highlight that. But Meredith is asking, have you found any barriers at the collegiate level for inputting and sharing data around these partners? So is it solely your team entering that data? How does that work? And do you have issues with like owning a relationship?
Yeah, I can take that one on. So what we have run into some barriers right now at the collegiate level. About 1/3 of our departments are using Salesforce, and that's kind of a problem for us. Those that are using Salesforce are really good at entering their data and actually kind of collaborating, creating a collaborative hub. But the issue is actually more on who's in Salesforce and who's not. And that's been our bigger issue, where people that are maybe in Salesforce are doing collaboration, doing well, inputting data, but then they're not knowing about what someone else is doing on campus for us. And so we're actually just starting right now a process with our dean's office to get kind of full school adoption of Salesforce. And so previously we were grassroots style. We're switching more to being kind of executive sponsored or kind of leadership led. And I think that's going to really, from there, the kind of root thing we're going to be doing is, what does ownership look like for the school? And at the same time, what are the key things, or what are the key items that people are going to be having when they enter Salesforce? So kind of terms of engagement, as well as how do we keep using Salesforce?
Couple more questions. We have about a minute left. One is account hierarchy, deduping, cleanup, and then another is, how are employers being added? So are you doing that manually and integration, and who's kind of managing that process?
Yeah, so I would say probably 80% of our data is coming in from our integration. So the companies are probably 80% of those are coming in from the Handshake integrations and things like that. That other 20% is the teams like Brian that are using Salesforce to add. Brian, I think about your role. You do a bunch of different startups, and so they may not have a company in Salesforce yet. And so there's, the bigger Fortune 500 companies are going to be in there, but the new startups, they may not be. And so that's where kind of a mix of integration and individuals.
That's a labor of love. That first time you're having a meeting with a startup and that's not in Salesforce, so being a little bit proactive to get that stuff entered and make sure it's good to go. So yeah, my team will do that as needed, and maybe a contact, right? So the person you're having a meeting with, isn't in Salesforce, but the organization is, and just getting them in and under that, the umbrella of that organization.
Yeah, and I'll quick answer the question of the account hierarchy and the deduplication here. I can do it in 30 seconds. So we don't have a full account hierarchy. If the Fortune 500 companies that may have multiple entities, we're just treating them as one. We're talking actually at a university level. What does that look like for us as corporate relations? And we have some different ideas on how that looked. But at least for our school, we're not doing that. But we are doing some data cleanup and duplications. We're using Epsona and their dedupe tool. And so probably every other week, I'm going through that and looking through those.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. We didn't have time for your second question, but Nick might be able to answer that through the chat there. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Nick and Brian. That was really helpful information. Thank you.
Should stay on just for a minute or two in case someone had a last minute question here.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brenda, as well.